Arizona, Florida, Kentucky, Colorado, California. That is the list you keep seeing, and I am going to give it to you straight up front rather than making you wait 20 minutes for the names. The crackdown on off-grid living is real. Counties are writing rules faster than anybody can read them. But the list itself has a problem, and the problem is the very first state on it. My name is Hank. I sold up in the lower 48, bought raw land, and I have read more county ordinances than any man should have to. And when the version of this video that I am remaking today went out, something happened underneath it that I have not been able to stop thinking about. People who actually live in Arizona turned up in the comments in numbers to say it was wrong, not politely. One of them wrote that it was absolute nonsense and that you can get a state tax credit for catching rain. Another said flatly that thousands of people live off-grid there and it is entirely legal. A third had gone and looked it up and reported back that harvesting rain in Arizona is not merely allowed, it is encouraged. They are right. I went and checked, and I will show you exactly where the story came from, because the real answer is more useful than the myth. And so here is what we are doing. All 5 states. What is genuinely restricted, what is invented, and at the end, the thing that actually takes your land away from you, which is not on anybody's list because it is not dramatic enough to make a video about. If you know somebody about to buy raw ground on the strength of one of these videos, send them this one first. That is all I will ask of you up front. Arizona. Rainwater harvesting in Arizona is legal. The state's own water agency encourages it because it is a desert and a gallon you catch is a gallon nobody has to pump. There are financial incentives attached to installing a water conservation system, and various cities run their own rebate programs on top of that. Tucson in particular has been pushing residents toward catchment for years. What is actually restricted is narrower and more sensible than the story. Drinking water is treated differently from irrigation water, so if you intend to run rain into your taps for potable use, you are in a regulated conversation about filtration and testing. Some cities and counties have their own rules about tank placement and plumbing, and there is a real permit question if you connect anything to a public supply. None of that is a crackdown. That is a health code, and every state on earth has one. So where did the story come from? It came from Colorado, and we will get to that, and somebody somewhere stapled Colorado's genuine restriction onto Arizona's name, and it has been repeated ever since by people who never went and looked. Here is why I am spending so long on this. If a video will tell you something that thousands of residents can disprove from their own back garden, that video is not researched, and you cannot trust the other 4 states in it either. The residents in that comment section were not being difficult. They were doing quality control on a video that had already been watched by 300,000 people, and almost nobody read them. What is genuinely hard about Arizona off-grid is not the rain. It is the water underneath you and the heat above you, and neither of those is a law. Let me be specific about that because it is the part worth your money and attention. In much of rural Arizona, your options are a well or hauled water. A well means a driller, a depth nobody can promise you in advance, and a pump that has to run off the same solar array that is already carrying your cooling load in August. Hauling means a tank, a trailer, and a trip you will make for the rest of your life. Neither is a disaster. Both are a permanent line in the budget, and both are the thing that actually sends people back, while everybody online argues about rain barrels. Colorado. Now the state that actually earned the reputation, and this is the good part, because the truth is stranger than the myth. Colorado really did make rain barrels unlawful. Not as a quirk of one county, but statewide, and for a reason that goes back to how the entire West divides water. Under prior appropriation, the rain that lands on your roof was already spoken for. Somebody downstream holds a right to that water, and by catching it you are taking something that had been legally promised elsewhere. That is genuinely how it worked, and Colorado was the only state in the country with a flat ban of that kind. Yeah, it changed. In May of 2016, the governor signed a bill that finally allowed residential rain barrels. The rules are specific and worth knowing rather than guessing. You may use 2 barrels, and the combined storage cannot exceed 110 gallons. It applies to single-family homes and small multifamily buildings of 4 units or fewer. The water has to be caught off your own rooftop downspouts and used on the same property, outdoors only for the garden and the lawn, not for drinking, not plumbed into the house. And within those limits, you do not need a special permit. So the correct sentence about Colorado is not that catching rain is illegal. It is that Colorado had the strictest rainwater law in America, fixed it a decade ago, and left behind 100 internet articles that never updated. If you are planning a serious off-grid water system there, that 110-gallon ceiling is a real design constraint and you need to know it. But it is a limit, not a ban. Florida. Florida is not a rainwater story at all. Florida is an occupancy story, and it is the one that should genuinely worry you, because it is the model everywhere else is quietly copying. The mechanism is this. Nobody passes a law saying you cannot live off-grid, because that would be unpopular and probably unconstitutional. Instead, the county has a housing code that defines what makes a dwelling fit for people to live in, and that definition assumes a connection. Running water from an approved source, an approved sewage disposal system, electrical service. Fail any one of those, and your home is not a home in the eyes of the code. It is an unsafe structure, and the county can act against a structure in ways it could never act against a lifestyle. Florida has had cases exactly like that, where somebody living deliberately without utility connections was found to be occupying an unsafe dwelling. Not fined for going off-grid, cited for the building. Add the septic question, which in a state with that water table and that hurricane exposure is not bureaucratic pettiness, and add the impact fees, and add the fact that a lot of Florida's cheapest land is cheap because of what the water does to it in September, and you have your answer. Florida will not tell you no. Florida will tell you that what you built does not meet the definition of a house. And if you have only just found this, my name is Hank, and I want you to notice what that mechanism means for everywhere else, because it travels. It costs the county nothing to adopt a housing standard. It sounds like safety, and mostly it is. But once the definition of a habitable dwelling assumes a utility connection, going off-grid is not banned, it is simply reclassified as a defect. Watch for that language when you read your county's code, not the word off-grid, which will not appear anywhere. The words habitable, approved source, and unsafe structure. Those three tell you everything about how much freedom you actually have on that parcel. Kentucky. Kentucky is the quiet one on this list and the one people are usually surprised to see. Land is genuinely affordable, there is plenty of water, the growing season is real, and large stretches of it are rural in the way people picture when they imagine leaving. Rain is not a scarce resource you have to fight the state for, which by itself puts it ahead of half the places these videos push you toward. If you have spent the whole video worrying about water, this is the part of the country where that particular worry stops. The friction is local and it is uneven. Some counties have adopted building codes and inspection regimes, and some have barely any. Septic approval is the common gate, because it is handled through health departments that take it seriously. And a percolation test on the wrong ground can end a plan that looked perfect on a map. Mobile and manufactured homes attract their own rules about age and condition, which catches out people planning to put an older trailer on a parcel as a first step. None of it is a prohibition. All of it is the same lesson as every other state on this list, which is that the sentence that matters is written at the county courthouse and not the state capitol. The other thing about Kentucky that the list never mentioned is coal country and what it left behind in the deeds. In parts of the state, the mineral rights under a parcel were separated from the surface a very long time ago and sold off to somebody else entirely. You can own the surface outright and discover that a company owns what is beneath it and holds a legal right to get at it. That is not common everywhere, and it is not a reason to avoid the state, but it is a title question you ask before you buy rather than after, and almost nobody buying on the strength of a video knows to ask it. California, and now the one everybody expects to be the villain, where the truth is genuinely split. Yes, California is heavily regulated. Building codes are extensive, permits are slow and expensive. Coastal and fire zone rules add layers most states do not have. And in a lot of counties, the cost of getting permission is a serious fraction of the cost of building. If your plan depends on nobody noticing, California is the worst state in the union for you. But here is the comment I cannot get past from a man in Southern California underneath the very video I am remaking. He has not paid an electric bill in more than 15 years. He drew up plans for his solar array, got them approved by the building department, had his electrical upgrade inspected, and it cost him almost nothing beyond parts because the state wanted people installing solar and made it easy to do it properly. That is a man living the outcome everyone in these comments says they want. In the state, everyone in these comments says is impossible. And the reason it worked is that he went through the front door instead of around the back. So California is not a crackdown state. California is a permission state. It will let you do a great deal, and it will make you ask first. And if asking offends you, then it is not for you. Those are two different objections, and it is worth being honest with yourself about which one you actually have. There is a real cost to the queue, and I will not pretend otherwise. Time is the expensive part. A permit that takes a season in one county takes 2 years in another. And while you wait, you are paying for land you cannot live on yet. In the fire zones, you will also be building to standards that add real money, defensible space, ember-resistant vents, specified roofing, and your insurance will be its own separate ordeal or may not be available at all. That is the genuine argument against California, and notice that not one word of it is about rain barrels or off-grid living. It is about cost and delay, which is a completely different complaint from being forbidden. Now the part that is on none of these lists. The top comment under that video was not about any state. It was a man explaining that when you buy land, you are not really buying it. You are taking over somebody else's lease from the county, and the annual payment is called property tax. He said his own bill was over $1,500 a year back in 1972, and that if he had stopped paying, the actual owner would have removed him. You can argue the law with him and you would probably win. As a description of how the arrangement behaves, he is not wrong, and nobody who has been through it needs it explained. And here is the trap inside the trap, which is the bit that catches self-sufficient people specifically. Improve the property and the assessment can follow you. Put up the barn, drill the well, replace the cabin with something you actually want to grow old in, and you may have just raised your own annual payment. The better you build, the more it costs you to keep it. I am not saying do not improve your place. I am saying know that the meter is watching, and ask the assessor's office what triggers a reassessment in that county before you pour a foundation, not after the letter arrives. That is the real crackdown, and it does not need a single new ordinance. Solar panels and a well can take you off the utilities. Nothing takes you off the tax roll. A man with no mortgage, no power bill, and no water bill still has one payment he must make every year for the rest of his life to keep standing on ground he paid for outright. And it goes up, and he does not get a vote on how much. And there was another comment that reframed the whole argument for me. A woman pointed out that most people going off-grid are not dodging bills at all. They are living where there is no water pipe and no power line to connect to. The utilities never came, and then the county writes a code that assumes they did and treats the absence as a violation. She asked why the state is not the one being fined for failing to provide the service. I do not have an answer to that. I have not stopped thinking about the question. So let me put you somewhere and ask you something. You have owned your parcel outright for 9 years. No mortgage, no power bill, water from your own well. The county reassesses, your tax bill roughly doubles, and the letter offers no explanation you can follow. You are on a fixed income. You can pay it, but only by giving up something else that matters. Do you pay it quietly? Do you go and stand up at the county meeting where almost nobody shows up? Or do you start looking at a cheaper county and doing the whole thing again 10 years older? Be honest, because most of us say we would fight it, and most of us pay. Tell me in the comments which one you actually are, and if you have been through a reassessment, say what happened, because somebody reading this tonight is about to buy a parcel without ever having thought about year 9. So there they are. Arizona, which does not belong on the list and whose own residents said so. Colorado, which earned the reputation and then fixed it in 2016, and nobody updated the story. Florida, which will not ban your lifestyle and will simply decide your house is not a house. Kentucky, where the answer is at the courthouse and changes by county. And California, which is not a wall so much as a queue. The pattern underneath all 5 is the same. There is almost no state that outlaws living off-grid. There are a great many counties that make the paperwork so heavy that people give up, and there is a tax bill that arrives every single year, no matter how self-sufficient you become, which means the useful question is not which states are cracking down. It is a much smaller and more boring question, and it is the only one that has ever protected anybody. What does the county I am actually looking at define as a habitable dwelling? What will it make me connect to, and what will it charge me every year once I have? 3 sentences, 1 phone call, and it will tell you more than any list on this website. The states are the headline, the county is the contract. If you are off-grid right now, tell me what your county actually did and what it actually cost, because a real number from you beats every list on this website, including mine. And if this saves somebody a mistake, pass it along to them. I am Hank. I put one of these out every single day, and this channel exists so somebody says the quiet part out loud before you sign anything. If that is worth something to you, subscribe, and I will see you at the next one.